Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby and today I'm going to be talking about some book recommendations for books that I think will give you nightmares. These books are going to be some thriller books and some horror books that I find just absolutely terrifying. They kind of play on my own personal fears, so I know that these recommendations might not work for everyone because I do feel like the things that give us nightmares, like all of that is subjective, right? Because we all fear different things and we have different things that get into our subconscious and make us think about them late into the night. But I have 8 books on this list that personally gave me nightmares and made me think about them so long after I finished them, and I still think about them to this day, and they're just some truly terrifying books. And so if you want some books during this spooky season that will give you nightmares potentially, then this is the video for you. So the very first book that I want to mention on this list is probably the one that literally scared me the most. Out of all of these books, I still think about this book, and I read it pretty recently, but I still think about it all the time. And when I read this book, I was reading it as an ebook and I was reading it on my phone in the dark of my room, and I was genuinely getting so creeped out. Like I had to sleep with the lights on like 2 nights in a row after I finished this book because I just kept imagining seeing things in the dark. And that book is The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. And this book, oh my gosh, I can't even explain what about it. I think it's just the writing itself is just so terrifying. And this book mainly follows this guy who's a patient in this insane asylum, and we kind of follow his story from like when he was a kid and like how he ended up in the insane asylum all the way through his adulthood. And we kind of follow as this psychologist therapist dude starts to go in there and tries to like talk to him and get to know him. And oh my gosh, this book was just so like, it gave me the like willies, like the woo. I was literally so scared imagining some of the things that this patient has done like when he was like a kid, like some of the things he did when he was a kid and the way they described what he did. Like it's just truly like so creepy. And I don't know, it's like something about like little kids and like creepy like little kids, like it really scares me so much. Another book that gave me nightmares that's probably not going to come as a surprise to you is The Troop by Nick Cutter. And this book gave me nightmares because not only like the idea of this book is just truly terrifying, but just the descriptions in this book is truly terrifying. And it really got to me because in this book we follow this group of boys who are like a troop, and they are on this island in the Canadian wilderness when this man pulls up in a boat on this island, and he's like shoveling dirt into his mouth and he's saying like, "I'm so hungry, feed me." And they don't know what's wrong with him, but they quickly find out. And this book just took body horror to like a new extreme for me. Like it was so graphic. Like this is definitely one of the most graphic things that I've ever read, and maybe that's just what really stands out to me about this book is how graphic and gory and just gruesome it was. And it was like literally the thing of nightmares. Like I was so freaked out reading this book, and this book definitely like crept into my subconscious and made me think about it all the time. And I just think especially with, you know, the way the world is right now, like this is a nightmare. Like 2020 is also a nightmare, and this just really kind of felt so similar to what's happening in the world right now that it was even more terrifying. While we're on the subject of really graphic violence in books, I feel like Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter is a book that will give you nightmares, because this book is definitely the most graphic book that I've ever read. This one, I don't even know if you would consider this one a horror book at all, but this one's like an adult thriller, and Karen Slaughter's writing is just, it has some of the most graphic scenes that I've ever read in a book, and it truly just haunts me to this day. But this book is just one of my favorites of all time because this is like the only thriller that has ever made me bawl my eyes out. Like I just really got attached to this situation, and the ending just absolutely broke my heart. I don't know, I really enjoyed it, but this is definitely the kind of thriller that will give you nightmares. At least it definitely did for me. Like the stuff that happens in this book is just so unimaginable and sick that it just like, it made me physically ill at times. Another thriller that I think might give you nightmares is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This is another one of my favorite books of all time, but I feel like this book will really give you nightmares if you have this deep fear of like a home invasion, because that's definitely one of the most terrifying things to think about for me, is like the idea of somebody breaking into your home, you know, because like your home is your safe place, you know, like that's where you should feel the most safe in the world. And like the idea of people just like barging into your home and trying to kill you or something, that is like the number one scariest thing to me. And so this book just really like hit the nail on the head for that fear, because this book follows this gay couple, Eric and Andrew, and they're at their cabin in the woods with their adopted daughter Wen, and then these four people show up on their doorstep and they're like, yo, you need to help us do this thing or the world is going to end, like it's going to be the apocalypse. And the thing that they have to do is just so horrific and awful. My god, it's just such a great book. But like this book definitely gave me the most anxiety I've ever felt while reading a book, and this book has stayed on my mind for so long. Like I read this book 2 years ago now, and it just like haunts my freaking mind. The next two that I wanted to talk about are both Stephen King books, and Stephen King writes a lot of really great horror books, obviously, but the ones that I think would stick in your brain the most, or at least the ones that did for me, is 1922 and Night Shift. 1922 is one of his short stories, and this book in particularly deals with rats. And if you've ever had a fear of rats, like holy shit, this book will just make you 10 times more afraid of rats. I don't know, there's just something about this book. It's like the imagery of like the idea of this farm on this land, and the fact that it's kind of like historical and takes place in older times, and just the gruesome like grittiness of this story. Like it just really crept into my subconscious while I read this. And you know, the rats thing, like I mentioned, it's terrifying. And then same with Night Shift. This is a collection of short stories by Stephen King, so again, I almost feel like his books are more terrifying when they're short. Like short stories are really great for Stephen King's writing. Like I don't know, it just really works for me. But some of the stories in this collection, like I just read this collection in September, but I can already tell like some of these stories will be haunting me for such a long time. And I've already had nightmares about this book. Like the story The Boogeyman, I don't know why, it just gives me nightmares. I think it's the kid thing, you know, I don't know. It's like I have this weird fear of like kids that are like possessed or something, like, or kids that like can see shit that you can't. It just really freaks me out. So The Boogeyman is definitely one of those stories. And you know, the whole rats thing, that short story in this Graveyard Shift, like oh my god. Not this entire collection, but there's definitely a few short stories in here that just really like makes my skin crawl, and I just think about it late at night, and then I'm like, why am I thinking about it right now? Another book that I think might give you nightmares, but it might just be me because I'm a little bitch and I get scared easily, and that's Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is mainly because I was reading this book, you know, in the dark, like late at night, and it's just some of the imagery in this book, it was starting to freak me out a little bit. This is definitely a book that's like Haunting of Hill House vibes. So like if you found The Haunting of Hill House scary, and if The Haunting of Hill House gave you nightmares, then this shit will probably do the same thing for you. I guess it's just what's happening in this book, like the whole haunting aspect, you know, because this whole book takes place in a haunted house. So it's like some of the things happening in this book, like I don't know, it's just really freaky, and it definitely gave me nightmares because I was just thinking about this late into the night, and it was just like but this book is also a really fun time, and it's mostly like it doesn't ever get too dark. No, it's just the idea of this book, like some of the scenes just freak me out, like the imagery, it's just written very well. And then the last one that I think might give you a nightmare is Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. And I know this might seem like a weird recommendation because I personally didn't even like this book that much. Like I gave this book like 2 stars, but the beginning of this book is just really well done. So in this book, we're basically following this guy who bought this heart-shaped box that has this suit in it that this old man used to own, and he didn't realize when he bought the heart-shaped box that he also bought the soul of this old man that still lives in the suit in the box. And so in this book we kind of see him as he's realizing this old man ghost is living in his house or apartment or whatever. And it's like so creepy, like the way he describes this ghost in the first couple of scenes where he sees him, it's just like so creepy. And he says the ghost, he like doesn't even have eyes or whatever, they're like black, just like holes, and like, or they look like they're like covered out with like Sharpie or something. Like I don't know, but it was really freaking me out, and this book was really effective because it definitely gave me a nightmare after I read this. I just kept imagining when I would like go out to the hall to like go to the bathroom in the middle of the night that I'd see this fucking ghost just like standing there watching me, and like it's just so scary. This book definitely like dropped the ball for me later on in this story, but the first 100 pages were very effective. So I would say just for that reason alone, it might give you a nightmare. So those are all of the recommendations that I have for books that might give you nightmares. And you might have read some of these and you're probably thinking like, are you freaking kidding me? Like those books aren't even scary. You're just a little bitch. And you know what? You might be right. I don't know. I just think sometimes like really random things in books can really freak me out and scare me, and then it just gets into my subconscious and then I dream about it and have nightmares about it. And everybody's different, and I know everybody's afraid of different things for different reasons, and these are just the books that have stuck with me the most, that like have freaked me out the most. So yeah, that is all for this video. If you have any book recommendations for books that you think might give me nightmares based off of some similarities to these other books, then please let me know. And also let me know what books have given you nightmares, or have books ever given you nightmares. I know some people don't really experience books that way, I guess. But yeah, let me know which books have given you nightmares before. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with a new video.